Bam! MC is in the house. What's going on, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here Wednesday, live, every Wednesday, noon Eastern Standard Time, deep diving on a topic, having a good time while doing it. If you guys have not yet checked the links in the description, every week, every one of these videos, I put a bunch of relevant links. I would absolutely tell you to go and check those out. Not only can you get some free training that I offer, but it also gets you connected to my email list, my email newsletter, which is free every morning. I write an email, send it out, and I usually get some pretty great feedback. Every once in a while, I get some terrible feedback too, but I guess you got to be in it to win it, right? So, who do we got here today? Jesse, what's up, Jesse? Aaron, good to see you. Buongiorno to you as well. Right now, we are streaming on a couple of Facebook pages, YouTube, and X. So, those guys that are able to do so, please give me a shout. Let me know that you are watching and keeping me company. Caceres, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Todd, good to see you, my friend. All right. So let's get into what the topic of the day is. Sometimes it takes me a while to think about, all right, what am I going to talk about Wednesday? What do I think is relevant to the people who like my stuff, to the value that I feel that I offer people? What topic will represent that in a nice, short conversation. And sometimes it takes a while. This week was not one of those cases. It was pretty much like just popped up. This is a great topic to talk about. Jamie, what's going on, my man up in Canada? The meltability of modern man, right? The meltability of modern man. One of the things that I put in an email the other day, I usually have a quote of the day in my emails, and it was, don't fake it till you make it. Do it until you become it. Don't fake it till you make it. Do it until you become it. What's the logic around there? The logic that implies. Too many times in society today, and this was also reflected in the email I wrote today, talking about today's upcoming talk. There is a point where individuals who really, really want to achieve a certain status sort of adopt a mindset of adorning themselves with the superficial characteristics of what that end game looks like, right? It's the fake it till you make it. And I think it's a poor way to go about transforming one's life, transforming one's capabilities. Because in my experience, there's a point where the road that people have endeavored to travel, if it represents more stress and pressure than the individual can withstand, where that road leads to is irrelevant. Saying that you're somebody who has already traveled that road, fake it till you make it, is almost illogical at that point. And I think a lot of times when people share that advice of faking it till you make it, what they're trying to accomplish is sort of giving somebody to focus their conscious mind on so that they don't become distracted and bogged down and eventually sabotaged by the pressures that they endure. And I just think that's a weak way to go about it. The positive thinking, mindset is limited, and it is irresponsible in that many people who want to champion positive thinking as a strategy for achievement, what they're actually doing is basing an outcome on their thinking. If I think this is going to be true, it will come true, as if there is no road or process to be traveled or traversed along the way. And I think therein lies the problem. I am much more of an advocate for understanding that, this is going to be tough. It's going to be tumultuous. But along with that, if I set a goal far enough in the future, there is an inherent level of abstraction in that goal. Meaning, if I set a 10-year goal, and I was just talking to my mastermind group this morning about this, if I set a 10-year goal, I almost have to accept that chances are a lot of stuff's going to change between here and then. And I'm probably going to pivot in a different direction before those 10 years arrive. So I think when I'm looking at an individual who wants to achieve this success, first and foremost, I got to have him represent or maybe figure out what that successful outcome that he's aiming toward actually represents to who he is right now. I want to be a millionaire. Okay, you want to be a millionaire. What does that mean? Does that mean you have $1 million? Does that mean you're making $1 million a year? Does it mean your net worth is $1 million? Is it you want to have the attributes that you've seen other millionaires have? Do you want to be treated by other people like you've seen them treat millionaires? Like, what is the actual value of this goal? Now, if we determine what that value is, and we say, okay, so we've determined what this value is, I want to be a millionaire, but we know what that represents to us, we could still say, okay, let's get on the path of being a millionaire. But I think what we have to do is remind ourselves that the reason we chose this output is because of the goals that we've established ourselves as having, the true goals, the valuable goals, the why, people say, right? That's the latest catchphrase. What is your why? Well, this is pretty much what I'm trying to get at here. When you understand what that is, then you understand that the applications to allow you to pursue it may change over time, right? In a past talk, I've shared the parable. I don't know if it's a parable. I think any cool wisdom sounding story should be called a parable, but it's the story of the fisherman and the businessman. And I'm not going to rehash it now, but the moral of that story, that fable, that parable, is the businessman was like, oh man, you could have so much if you do all these things. And the fisherman is like, well, why would I do all those things? And they had this, this conversation that went on and on. And ultimately the businessman said, if you go on this whole journey that I've just described to you, you'll be able to hang out and fish all day. And the irony obviously being he interrupted somebody who was hanging out fishing all day as it was. So sometimes we get so in love, we fall so in love with this process that we lose sight of the fact that, what is the actual end game that we're looking to pursue? I've said before that, if I were to see an 8-year-old who said, I want to be a fireman, and then I see him at 28 and he is in fact a fireman, most people would say, oh, that's adorable. Wasn't that cool? Isn't that cute? This 8-year-old knew what he wanted to be. And, I'm the one that's just thinking to myself, so between 8 and the time you became a fireman, let's say 20. So between 8 and 20, nothing, no other opportunity presented itself. No other skill set was acquired that allowed you to see yourself as being capable of going different directions. Like fireman, that was it. And I think that sort of tunnel vision has a point of diminishing returns. I think that level of focus, when it comes to an outcome-driven type of focus, needs to be reduced to a level of scale where we're not pursuing abstraction at the cost of opportunities. The 8-year-old that wants to be a fireman, did he not go to an incredible college because he wanted to be a fireman? Did he not want to do a incredible amount of traveling? Did he not pursue some sort of skill, some natural skill and talent that he had that if he would have invested in, he could have been a master of this craft? Like what other opportunities did he close the door on because at 8 years old, he said he wanted to be a fireman? That's pretty much what I'm describing here. I'm never going to be somebody who says, if you at least act like you've made it, then you will find a way to make it so. In today's email, and let me just bring it up just so I could read it verbatim. When I was informing you guys about today's talk, I said, a block of iron can be forged and molded into the finest of swords. A plastic sword, however, will never do anything but melt. Today's men would rather be plastic swords than endure the process of first becoming iron. So this is an argument for the value of a mindset, a relationship with who we are, that in the face of pressure, we do not crumble. If you look at the thumbnail for today, there is a man forging a sword. And the man I describe as the man, the sword I describe as the mindset, and the flame, the forge, I describe as movement. What am I advocating for here? At least an understanding of, maybe if you choose not to pursue this, that's fine. But I will make the point that it is valid, that it is what we endure that allows us the opportunity to forge the mindset that'll allow us or enable us to achieve what we want. If you are the person that acts like you have a great mindset, this does not mean that a good mindset will suddenly be born from that, that acting job that you're doing. You got to go through some shit, right? You got to go through some shit. You got to figure some stuff out. In one of my power programs, Mission Mastery, I have one of the videos that describes my model of the bumpy road. And the bumpy road is a way to look at goal setting and the pursuit of different outcomes in the form of goals. And in the bumpy road model, the goal is basically the end of the road that we're looking to travel. And what is the value of the goal? It tells us which road to take, right? It sort of gives us a direction. It shows us where to aim the trajectory of our efforts. And that bumpy road that we're traveling, one of the things that I explain in detail in that video is that the bumps, hills, and the mountains that are represented as the obstacles on that road between your starting point and the outcome, the goal, there's varying degrees, varying levels of obstacles. I separate them into bumps, hills, and mountains. But the idea of it is the most stuff is hidden to you when you're at the starting line behind the biggest obstacles on the path. So if there is a mountain in your way between you and your goal, you have to value that mountain because of how much information you are going to learn once you are on the other side of it. Information that you cannot begin to understand from the starting line. So without enduring these obstacles, you don't get the information that separates you from the person who has no experience doing the thing. Right? My father was a lifelong avid fisherman. And his ability to fish, his ability to just, figure out a body of water and how to get the fish that are in it on a hook was incredible. My father didn't go to fishing academy, fishing university. He didn't study with the great masters of fishing. He probably had mentors, certainly had mentors along the way, I'm sure. But one of the things about my father is that he just walked the path. And by walking the path, he came into contact with a whole collection of obstacles that were in his way. And he had to figure them out. And eventually, once he figured them out, he had the information and was allowed to be somebody who no longer would succumb to those types of obstacles. He had the information. At no point in the beginning could he just fake it like he was a master fisherman and suddenly those obstacles would be disarmed in the process. No, he had to actually go through some shit. You guys have heard me say before, no pressure, no power. No pressure, no power. So what is the utility of this, right, for the modern man? And obviously so much of this applies to women, but I'm the, help men be better men guy. So I'm going to, populate the talks with that type of language. But men today, they have the luxury of faking it till they make it. Along with the whole collection of problems I just described that type of mindset creates, another one that I could articulate is it prevents a man from just with a functional level of humility saying, I don't know how to do this, but I'm not going to quit until I figure it out. Again, from the email, let me read the language that I used. A block of iron can be forged and molded into the finest of swords. A plastic sword, however, will never do anything but melt. How that pertains to what I'm describing is the individual who says, I know I don't have the skills and abilities, but I'm not going to quit. And I understand I'm going to have to go through some shit, but I'm going to continue to push. That is the man who has decided to become a block of iron. But there is an amount of humility that needs to come with that. And that the guy has to acknowledge to those people who he might be connected to socially, and some semblance, some percentage of his identity might be based on the approval of these individuals in these social settings. He has to acknowledge to them, yeah, I don't know how to do this. I don't have the ability to do this. There is a point where that humility and transparency through that acknowledgement empowers somebody to get on the path as powerfully as they can. So if you're an individual who is still acting like he doesn't make mistakes, who's still acting like he doesn't have shit to work on, who's still acting like, he knows better than everybody around them because of the status that they might be able to enjoy by acting that way, you are a plastic sword. You are pretending to have all the capabilities of a sword. You are presenting yourself as a sword, but you've never gone through the forging process because you've never first allowed yourself to become a block of iron. I look at people today in the society of surplus, right? The aquarium, as I call it. I try to explain to people, like, a common distinction that I make to illustrate this concept is, you have the employee and you have the entrepreneur. An employee at some point, in order to remain functional, understands that the two basic things he has to do to succeed in his plan, in his formula, is get to work when he's supposed to be at work when he's supposed to be at work, and don't get fired. Do whatever you need to do to not get fired. Show up on time. Now, maybe there's, those that one could be absorbed into the other, but show up, don't get fired. An entrepreneur has a different level of task ahead of him. He has to actually create. He doesn't have to operate in a machine that's already established. He doesn't have to become a master bureaucrat, right? The entrepreneur needs to look at the opportunities that are in front of him, the skill sets that he has, and just find a way to make it work. Find a way to create something. Right? If you are creative, if you consider yourself to be creative, it always begs the question, what have you created? An entrepreneur needs to be a creator. He needs to create something, or he's not going to be able to feed himself or his family. He's not going to be able to climb any ladder of power to speak of if he doesn't first build a relationship with creating. Part of building a relationship with creating is you have to acknowledge at some point you have not created the thing you are endeavoring to create. Humility and gratitude. Man, I was listening to an interview. I got to find a quote. It was a Michael J. Fox quote about gratitude. Amazing quote, Michael J. Fox. With gratitude, optimism becomes sustainable. With gratitude, optimism becomes sustainable. So what is optimism? Optimism is by my definition, the acknowledgement of a potential positive outcome, despite the feedback in the moment. Optimism is this sort of alliance we have with hope. It is, I'm looking to make the argument that there is a good outcome potentially to be had. That is what somebody who's optimistic. And to go back to his quote, if that is something about optimism, how do we make it sustainable? Michael J. Fox, who's been through some shit, you guys know. Michael J. Fox, the whole way, he could have described this any way he wanted to, but he says with gratitude. So if we're looking at what we're grateful for, if we look at our lives and talk about all the things that we want, sometimes we make the mistake of dismissing or ignoring all the things that we have. But building a gratitude for the things that we have allows us to sustain the humility to become that block of iron to be forged. I've coached a lot of men one-on-one in my coaching program over the last decade plus. Some guys have crushed it and continue to crush it. Some guys melted. To use my, sword metaphor, some guys didn't do well with me as a coach because I looked to forge them. But they wanted to bypass the forging process because they wanted to claim that they were already swords. They were already magnificent, strong, impressive swords. And they were plastic. And I knew they were plastic. And I knew that in order to help them, we needed to, number one, get over the fact that they built this whole structure of identity around this fraudulent ecosystem. Some people, if they only learned to get out of their own way, could accomplish anything. But because they don't know how to make that step, they don't know how to. I remember, should I use this example? Yeah, I'll use this example. Trump, right, who's called this, dysfunctional, crazy person by many. He went on a talk show. I don't know what talk show it was, like one of those late night shows. And that was it Jimmy Kimmel? Who's the one? There's like both of them are terrible. One of them is like a little fatter than the other one. The other one, who's not fat, thinks he could sing, whichever one that is. I think Trump went on his show, and he asked Trump about the hair. And, is it fake? Is it a toupee? Whatever. And Trump let him mess it up. And with that one stroke of opportunity and him allowing this guy to mess up his hair, he took all of the power out of any of those people that were saying that it was fake, or anybody that's trying to make a thing out of it. He just took the power away from them by being authentic, right? By being transparent. Well, I've dealt with plenty of men that in certain situations, because they cannot acknowledge that they don't know something, or they can't acknowledge that they are unhealthy and are uncomfortable in their bodies. You have the fat guy that refuses to let anybody acknowledge that he has a weight issue, or he talks about, the lack of value in paying attention to one's weight, and it doesn't matter. And it's like, what's the old, was it from Shakespeare? He thinks the lady doth protest too much. You get these people that are out of shape and fat that do nothing but talk about how it doesn't matter, what kind of condition you're in, or are you fat? Are you healthy? Or it doesn't. It's like, yeah, I think you kind of know that it is. And if they just acknowledge that, like, yeah, I got to lose some fucking weight. All the power all the power that it saps from them to maintain that facade immediately gets rediverted towards accomplishing their goals. But they can't first become a block of iron because they refuse to give up the reputation of being a sword. And that's a hurdle that people have to get over. I have strategies for that. I have paths that men could walk to be able to handle that process. But I think worth noting, and my experience certainly suggested or proves, some men aren't willing to even do that, right? It's an old plot device, like a joke in movies where, two guys are in a desert somewhere and one guy gets bit by a venomous snake in his ass and the other guy has to suck the poison out of the snake bite. And he's just like, yeah, you're going to die, buddy. Like, I'm not sucking snake poison out of your butt cheek. Well, there's sometimes these people where it's like, listen, if got to think of a better example for next time, but it's the way my brain works. There are some guys that I've dealt with where it's like, yeah, you just got to do this thing. And they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And they might even have the authenticity to even say, I'm not doing that. What they'll do in place of that is just devalue the suggestion. Well, that's not going to do anything. What does that matter? I had one of my coaching students, one of my past coaching students who, one of my favorite guys, but he had this hurdle he had with his physical presentation. And one of the things that I do with the guys that I work with, we're working on business. Some of these guys have multi-million-dollar operations that they're running. But one of the things that we do at the beginning is we establish good habits at the scale of self. And so part of that is designing a movement schedule. It's like, how are you exercising? What are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep? What are you doing in the morning, mobility-wise? Like, what is the relationship with the machine, right? The body. And at some point, this guy was getting very uncomfortable. And again, one of my favorite coaching students, but he had this blind spot when it came to this aspect of who he was. And at some point, he was like, I'm not getting coaching from you because I want to be in shape, because I want to be ripped. I'm here to help me with my business and help with the mindset and help with, organizing my staff. And like, I don't care. I'm not here to get in shape. So I had to say, I beg your pardon, but when you're going to do business with these certain people that he was doing business with, and these deals represent multi-million-dollar deals and commitments by either party, I asked him, I said, who's the guy? You have these individuals that are going to invest in you because they believe in you. What does it do to the potential for them to believe in you when you walk in your fancy suit? Because the guy had some fancy suits. When you walk in with your fancy suit, looking like a just physical crusher, how he does anything is how he does everything, or you want to be the guy that walks in with the fancy suit that has a belly out to here that looks like he has no discipline or self-control, trying to convince the guy that this guy should invest in you, looking like you can't even take care of yourself. And it took a while for him to wrap his head around this, but at some point he said, you know what, I think one of our calls, he said, oh yeah, so since last call, I hired a trainer. And it's like, oh, there you go. Now you're starting to get it. Right. So the idea of it is sometimes the work that we have to do isn't in even creating something. It's really just in being authentic with where we're at. It's okay to admit you're not there yet. It's okay to admit that you haven't figured something out yet. But the other side of that is you are on the road. You're in the process. Right. So let me see what we got going on here. All right. Corey, what's up, brother, man? You're on Saxa. Good to see you. Cherrytown Vibe, what's up, brother, man? Sline, good to see you. All right. So what do we got here? Cherrytown Vibe asks, is part of traveling the bumpy road feeling like you're losing and failing at every turn? I would say that there's certainly, if you ever hear me talk about friction and erosion, or friction escalating to the point where it becomes conflict, I think that there is a level of discomfort that we need to build a relationship with. But I would say rather than something that we're struggling against or hoping one day to be able to eliminate, I think that functional level of friction is pretty much feeling the water against our body while we're swimming. Like that little bit of friction reminds us that we're moving, which is a good thing. Now, however, there are going to be times where we fail in what it is that we're doing. And at the point of that failure, I would say that number one, it is going to be helpful if we frame that failure as an obstacle, meaning we just look at what we're considering to be a failure, just an obstacle that we're facing along the path. Now, this failure / obstacle may very well be the impetus for a detour and a pivot in another direction. But understand that there is no path that's worth anything, that represents any significant degree of change, where you are not going to stumble along the way. No pressure, no power. So rather than, this mindset of, not that putting this on you, but, it's certainly been expressed to me over the years, this mindset of I don't want to fail. The mindset should be when I fail pursuing this, valuable outcome, this will be my process for dealing with it. Because it's inevitable to some extent. If you guys have been following me a long enough time, I used to have a shirt company, right? Rough Zen. And Rough Zen was doing it right in the beginning. And then it wasn't. I didn't want to put the energy into it. I didn't really have the staff to really keep that energy up and going and functional. And it just fell by the wayside. Well, I invested, thousands and thousands of dollars in making that work. And at the end of it, I didn't really have anything to show for it. I don't allow that to define who I am. It's just, again, a bump in the road, right? That's the phrase. So the things that we consider to be failures oftentimes are reminders that we got something to do that we weren't aware of, right? So you're driving your car, all of a sudden one of the tires blows out. And now you're stuck with a blown out tire. Maybe the one thing that tire proves to you is that you should probably check your tires a little more often, as a simple example. So sometimes the thing that we could so easily create the story about, oh, why, and this always happens to us, it never works. It's really like, no, this is just information and feedback. And how are we going to be better given this information that we just received once we move forward, right? Aaron says, I had missed the email you sent a couple of days ago, but I kind of giggled at the fact that the fake it till you make it quote is actually at the end of that one. Whose kids start first? Right. That's right. That's right. Big Mike Dunson in the house. What's going on, brother, man? Good to see you. Jamie writes, consider the child trying to lift its head or roll over or stand up and walk. What is that child's relationship with failure? Such a great point to it. And let me just connect that to what I was describing before. Like, we're the ones that call it failure, right? We're the ones that put that label on some point of what it is that we're doing. To use an example of how this could be done dysfunctionally, I've been training fighters for 20-something years. And, if I'm teaching striking, punching, like if you look at boxers, the best strikers in the world, you have punches that they're throwing that aren't hitting. Like, in their mind, they're not going fail, 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 success, fail, 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 fail. Like, that's not the relationship they have with the movement. The movement is really just a process that's looked at a much larger scale. It's like, I'm going to move, I'm going to throw some stuff out there, I'm going to use these combinations. Every once in a while, I'm going to make contact, but they're not at the scale of every single bit of effort needs to be a reflection on whether or not I should keep doing this, right? We got to keep moving, right? Right on. All right. I think that's all the questions or comments that were here. Todd writes, I hope Tyson knocks the white off Paul, but this event is the fault of the modern man. Yeah, I don't even know what to think of it. Does Tyson need the money? I don't think so. Like, there are plenty of guys going to work today, and plenty of men on the planet that are going to work, and it's super dangerous, but they got to feed their families, they got to make their way, and so they got to suck it up and do it. I don't know if Tyson falls into that category. So then is it, he's trying to get that one last, just ovation on the crowd, the energy of the event, like the pressure and just the experience of being in that fight setting again. Like, I don't know what it is. The other one, Jake Paul, he's making money. That's all he's doing. I don't consider, what decisions he's making as being, manly decisions. I don't think they're the types of decisions that the men that I respect would make in those situations. But any criticism of the ethics or the morality of that decision, people of his ilk would just come back with saying, well, this is just money. This is just business. I'm making Tyson a bunch of money. Like, listen, it's just like, I don't even want to make a value judgment. It's not something I would do, Do I hope that Tyson knocks him out? Yeah. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? Tyson's almost 60 though, I'm 49 years old, and the things that I do to keep my body functional, like, I could fight right now. I can get into an MMA fight, right? I just don't think my body can withstand the training for an MMA fight for 10, 12, 16 weeks, like it used to be able to, right? If I go on the magic sauce, maybe, but the point of it is, there's just a point where I cannot produce the same level of preparation for that type of athletic event that a younger man could do. So now it's really, Jake Paul's going to have probably more endurance, more absolute strength. And we're banking on Tyson being able to have enough endurance and absolute strength that his skill can finish Paul before he gets tired, right? He's going to be a little slower, but I'm willing to bet that, yeah, if you just put them in there for 60 seconds, I'd be willing to bet on Tyson in that type of situation, but that's not what it's about. It's about a long training camp. It's about not getting hurt. It's about building up and peaking properly endurance wise. Like my kids go to wrestling once, twice a week, right? Locally here in Pennsylvania. And one of the things the wrestling coaches do, and it's common at the end of a practice to do an endurance training. I would never look to disrupt what it is that the wrestling coaches are doing in the training. But it is an argument that if they're not in season, then what is the value of there's always the mindset value, but beyond that mindset value, what's the value of like having an incredible endurance section at the end of workout? Like where they're doing the sprints and doing this and doing that. And again, there's a great mindset value. My kids are there. They're doing every fucking second of it. One of my sons a few weeks ago fractured his wrist in the endurance portion of the class. We didn't know it was fractured. We knew he banged his wrist and it was hurting him. He finished the entire workout. Afterwards, we found out that his wrist was fractured. So it's like the type of mindset that I support is one that my son, without any prodding, finished the workout with a fractured wrist. However, if I'm looking at the type of preparation that goes into a fight, you want to sort of have the ability to withstand that entire preparatory cycle, meaning we have the skill, we have the customization based on the opponent, we have a ramping up of the, strategy specific, execution of techniques. And then eventually we start priming and peaking the machine to be at its peak level of strength and endurance with a very fine-tuned and on-point strategy and game plan. I don't know if Tyson can really put that level of preparation in, so just my thoughts. I mean, like I said, I hope Tyson knocks him out. Probably not going to be the outcome. I could see them, I could see Paul winning a decision. I could see Paul TKOing Tyson in later rounds. I mean, I don't even know how many rounds is it going to be. Is it going to be 5, 10 rounds? If like we're talking like a 10-round fight, it's like that's a push, man. That is a push. I remember everybody, telling Conor McGregor or discussing the Conor McGregor Mayweather fight. And one of the things that people brought up is like, yeah, the endurance between MMA and boxing is incredibly different. Well, the endurance of what an in shape, 57 or 58-year-old Tyson has compared to a 27, 28-year-old, Paul, like that is going to be a world of difference too. So we'll see what happens. But all right, little bonus boxing take at the end of this. But we'll end it there. I appreciate you guys. Check out the link in the description. Get on the emails. Check out the other stuff that I got going on. Like the channel, subscribe, do all that stuff. You know the deal. And I will see you guys next week. I'm here every Wednesday, noon Eastern Standard Time. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you all next week. So as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.